Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again. And once again, I forgot to turn on the fucking BGM. God damn it. Let me just turn that on real quick. Hold up. Wait a minute. Always gotta be scuff. Always gotta be scuff. Why am I not getting a toolbar on my, that's weird. What was it called, the thing at the top? I actually forget the name of that thing. The thing at the top of the controls, it's not a ribbon. It's an older thing. What was that? What was that sound?
Jagged Alliance 2.
Fuck. Okay, first I'll turn on the music, then I'll fix Twitch. Hold on. Open recent media. No. Open directory. Yes. Can you hear that? Yes, you can. Excellent.
Is this the reading the manual stream?
Yes. Yes, it is. Hold on. Hold on. And then I think this can be just chatting. Okay, now that we fucked all that up, let's actually do the premise of the stream. In 1982, the Personal Computing Responsibility Act made personal computers illegal in the United States. Now it's 2024, and America runs on terminals, sleek, wrist-mounted devices that connect to IBM's vast mainframe network. The system provides everything: your identity, your money, your job, your life. But the system doesn't work for everyone. Some people fall through the cracks. Some people choose to live outside. And some people work in the shadows between the two worlds, enforcing the law or breaking it. Welcome to Terminal. In Terminal World, personal computers are illegal, have been for over 40 years. Most Americans have never used one, never owned one, can barely imagine why you'd want one. Instead, everyone uses terminals. Your terminal is a device you wear on your wrist and hand, connecting wirelessly to IBM's massive network of data centers. The terminal itself is just a display and input device. All the actual computing happens somewhere else, in a humming facility you'll never see. This means everything you do is mediated by the system, the interlinked infrastructure of IBM Computing and Bell Telecommunications that runs American life. Your identity is in the system. Your money is in the system. Your medical records, your employment history, your housing assignment. It's not cloud computing. It's subtly different. But yes, you are right that these things are analogous. Your housing assignment, your children's school enrollment, all in the system. If you're in the system, life is fine, stable, maybe a little boring. You have a career, benefits, security, the system provides. Also, I think the TTS was slightly too quiet. If you're not in the system, you don't exist. The IBM Personal Terminal is a wrist and glove device. A curved display on the outer wrist shows information. Input happens through the glove. Thin cables run from each finger to sensors in the wrist unit, detecting how much you flex each finger. Different combinations of finger positions, chords, produce different characters, like a one-handed keyboard you never have to look at. Everyone learns to chord in school. By adulthood, most people can input text without conscious thought, their fingers twitching in patterns too subtle to see. Experts operate entirely by touch, receiving feedback through mild electrical pulses that convey information without requiring them to look at the screen. The PT connects to docks, stations that provide network connectivity, larger displays, and video calling capability. Public docks exist wherever there used to be payphones. Private docks are in homes and offices. Your PT is your identity. Lose it, and you're inconvenienced. Have it revoked, and you're nobody. Two companies control American information infrastructure. IBM builds and operates the computing systems, the data centers, the software, the terminals themselves. They're the ones who decide what services exist, what the interface looks like, how much things cost. They're also responsible for security, which means they have their own enforcement division. Bell, the Bell system, AT&T, Ma Bell, handles telecommunications, every wire, every signal, every connection. They were never broken up like they were supposed to be. They're a monopoly, and they act like it. Together, IBM and Bell are the system. Working for either company is a good career. Crossing either company is a bad idea. The Personal Computing Responsibility Act of 1982 makes it illegal to own, operate, or manufacture an unlicensed computer in the United States. Computer is defined broadly. Licensed is defined narrowly. In practice, this means you can use IBM terminals, that's the point. Businesses and institutions can operate IBM-compatible systems with proper certification. Educational calculators are exempt if they meet specific limitations. Everything else is illegal. Penalties range from fines to federal prison, depending on what you were doing and how much the prosecutor wants to make an example of you. First-time offenders often get probation and equipment seizure. Repeat offenders, or anyone caught doing something threatening with their illegal computer, face serious time. This law is enforced by the FBI Computer Crimes Division. Federal law enforcement handles major cases. Bell Network Integrity Division, the linemen or jacks, Bell's security arm, investigates unauthorized network access. IBM Corporate Asset Protection, account managers or pencils. IBM Security Arm, investigates equipment violations and system abuse. IBM Special Accounts, closers. IBM Serious Response Team handles major threats. Local police generally defer to the specialists on computer-related crimes. Not everyone is in the system. Some people fell out, victims of bureaucratic errors, database inconsistencies, cascade failures in interconnected systems that left them unable to prove who they are. These are the dropped, people who technically exist, but whom the system doesn't recognize. Some people got pushed out, their system access revoked as punishment for crimes real or imagined. When IBM decides you're done, you're done. Your credentials stop working, your accounts freeze. Your employer gets a notification, your landlord gets a notification. This is being closed. Some people never fit. Immigrants without proper documentation. That's an interesting euphemism there, Claude. Children of the dropped. People who slipped through the cracks before the system caught them. And some people choose to leave. Idealists, criminals, eccentrics, and people who just couldn't stand having everything they did logged and monitored. These people form the underground, a loose network of individuals and communities surviving outside the system. They trade and cash or barter. They work off the books. They share what little computing resources they can scrounge. The underground isn't organized. There's no secret society, no resistance movement, no unified purpose. It's just people getting by. The underground has almost no computing power. The system has functionally infinite computation, enough to waste on trivial optimizations and targeted advertising.
Like the people without social media accounts.
Very close, yeah. The underground makes do with scraps. The TI-86 is the underground's workhorse. It's a graphing calculator, technically legal, technically not a computer. Schools buy them by the thousand. Some of these calculators get lost. They find their way to people who need them. The TI-86 can run programs, store data.
The music sounds good, but it's a bit loud relative to your voice.
I have fixed that. A TI-86 can run programs, store data. Is it?
My voice too.
Okay. Put it down where it was. There you go.
Evening. Jagged Alliance
No, not
2.
again.
Is this the reading the manual stream? Cloud computing. Like the people without social media accounts.
Damn
The
it.
music sounds good.
Why is it doing
but
this
it's a bit
now?
loud relative to your voice. My voice too. Thanks.
Okay. Now that's over. A TI-86 can run programs, store data, even communicate with other TI-86s through its link port. It's pathetically limited compared to the system, but it's something. In the underground, a working TI-86 is worth much more than a car. Worth more than a car. Not much more. Just more. Micros, actual personal computers, exist, but are rare, expensive, and dangerous to own. They're smuggled in from overseas where the PCRA doesn't apply. Getting caught with one is a federal crime. The underground also has access to aging packet radio networks, allowing communication without using Bell infrastructure. It's slow, unreliable, and constantly monitored, but it exists. For most Americans, the system is just how things are. You wake up, you check your notifications, you go to work, you come home. The PT on your wrist handles everything. You don't think about it any more than you think about electricity or running water. Jobs are stable. Most people work for the same company their whole career. Disruption isn't a buzzword. It's something that happens to other countries. Entertainment comes through the system-approved content, delivered on demand for a fee. There's no piracy because there's no way to copy things. There's no viral content because there's no mechanism for things to spread uncontrollably. News comes from established sources. Everyone watches the same channels, reads the same papers. There's a shared sense of what's happening in the world, even if that sense is sometimes wrong. It's comfortable, it's controlled, it's a little bit boring. And somewhere, in a data center you'll never see, a record of everything you've ever done is being stored, analyzed, and cross-referenced. And then this gets into the character creation mechanics. We can skim that.
Was the 3-letter acronym the trigger?
I think so. I think it saw something because it's instructed to take what it's given and turn it into proper English. So maybe if you give it something that is so unlike proper English, it goes, well, this isn't an entire thought, so it must be that he wants me to process this entire thing. That is why. That's what's happening.
The red button.
Let's see. We can go into the templates. The Jack, Bell Network Integrity Division Field Agent. You trace unauthorized connections, investigate network intrusions, and occasionally kick in doors. The Freakers call you a cop. You prefer lineman. Jacks come in two varieties, those who came up through legitimate Bell technical training, and those who were Freakers first and got recruited after getting caught. The template assumes the latter, hence the secret. A clean Jack can swap the... Many Jacks have contacts in the underground, useful for investigations, but dangerous if discovered. The Pencil, IBM Corporate Asset Protection Investigator. You enforce compliance, investigate violations, and ensure the system remains secure. Your colleagues at Bell think you're a desk jockey. You prefer thorough. Pencils are investigators, not field operatives. Those who expect physical confrontations should invest in self-defense skills. Higher-ranking pencils, administrative rank 3 to 4, have more authority but also more duty. Some pencils secretly attend calculator conventions. This would be a secret if discovered. The Closer, IBM Special Accounts Operative. When the system needs to make someone disappear, administratively, you make it happen. You don't arrest people. You don't need to. You just close their account. Closers are not common PCs. I think they could be. I think Claude is wrong about this. They're usually antagonists. A closer PC works best in a campaign focused on hunting serious criminals, or in a morally gray story exploring the human cost of the system. Closers who develop doubts about their work are natural candidates for defection storylines. The Freaker. You understand the system better than the people who built it. You know its weaknesses, its secrets, its hidden pathways. Some call you a criminal. You prefer enthusiast. Freakers come in many varieties. Some are idealists fighting for information freedom. Some are criminals using skills for profit. Some are just hobbyists who got in too deep. Adjust advantages and disadvantages accordingly. Wealthier freakers with system jobs have hot wrist, but much more to lose if caught. The Dropped. You used to have a life, a job, an identity. Then the system decided you didn't exist anymore. Now you're learning to survive in a world where everything requires credentials you don't have. The Drop template is intentionally lower powered.
IQ 11.
Now, bear in mind, in GURPS...
For the Dropped.
In GURPS, what did it set? Freakers have IQ 14? God damn. What did he put? Yeah, closers. These are all... Yeah, they all have high stats, because that's kind of... That's GURPS. GURPS is a role-playing system, role-playing game system. So 10 is baseline. So it's like, oh, you're a nerd, so you only got 9 strength.
So it's more like 110.
Exactly. You can kind of just multiply by 10. So, like, freakers are 140 geniuses, Your average dropped is a professional, a yuppie with IQ 11. And then, let's see, did it give anyone under 10 IQ? I feel like it wouldn't, because everyone is kind of some kind of tech nerd, right? Yeah, pencils have 13, jacks have 12. Yeah, everyone has high IQ. Which, so in GURPS, if you spend a lot of money on your a lot of points on your stats, that makes all your skills cheaper. So kind of the meta is to get a guy who's just crazy, has a crazy high stat, be it IQ or DX. I think HT and ST are less useful. And then you can buy a fuck ton of skills for cheap. You can see, this guy gets high administration, computer operation, accounting, professional, whatever professional skill, research, current affairs, savoir-faire, urban survival, area knowledge, fast talk, running. He gets all those for like 1 to 4 points a piece because he's buying off his high. It's not that high, but it's a high-ish IQ. The Fixer. You solve problems. Need documents? You know someone. Need to disappear? You know how. Need to get back on system? That's harder, but maybe. For the right price, you can make it happen. Fixers are the connective tissue of the underground. They know people. Some specialize in documents, other in logistics, other in disappearing people who need to vanish. A fixer's most valuable asset is their network. Protect those contacts. Many fixers maintain legitimate-appearing system identities. These characters have additional secrets to protect. The Wrench Monk. Computers are dying. You keep them alive. The underground calls you when their precious hardware fails. You coax another few months out of machines that should have died 20 years ago. It's not a job. It's a calling. I feel like he's laying it on a little thick. And yeah, these guys have a lot of cross TL skills. So the setting is TL8, which is, I guess, when GURPS came out, the real world was TL8. Now it's TL9, and the book doesn't really adjust for that because it's old. What was I saying? Yeah, these guys have he took their HT down a notch, so they're less tough, but they got the same strength, I guess, because they work on things. They got high DX and IQ. The TL7 skills represent expertise with older, pre-PCRA technology. Wrench monks are the keepers of dying knowledge, and their skills with obsolete equipment are more valuable than their modern credentials. Some wrench monks have formal engineering backgrounds, add engineer skills, other learned entirely through practice, add more intuition or luck. They're valued enough that even jacks sometimes look the other way when one passes. And then advantages, PT access, or a hot wrist. You have a legitimately registered personal terminal with valid system credentials. You can access system services, make purchases, verify your identity, and do all the things normal citizens do. This is the default assumption for system citizens and is free for characters whose templates already assume system integration. PT access, borrowed credentials. You have a working PT registered to someone else's identity, a friend, a deceased person, a fictional identity created by a fixer. It works, but using it creates risk. Every significant transaction has a chance of triggering an investigation. GM's discretion, typically 6 or less on 3D. For routine transactions, higher for suspicious activity. Contact group, underground network. The standard contact group advantage representing your connections in the underground economy. Skill level represents how competent your contacts are. Frequency of appearance represents how available they are. The underground is always available in major cities, but unreliable in rural areas. Gizmos, particularly appropriate for freakers and wrench monks. In Terminal World, gizmos typically represent improvised electronics, jury-rigged adapters, and I happen to have exactly the cable we need moments. Disadvantages: no PT access. You don't have a working personal terminal, or your credentials have been revoked. You cannot access system services. You cannot legally work, rent housing, make electronic purchases, or prove your identity. This is the default state for the dropped. This disadvantage can be bought off during play by acquiring working credentials, legitimately or otherwise. Cold wrist. You have a PT, but it's dead, fake, or registered to a burned identity. You wear it to look normal, but it doesn't actually work. You must constantly perform warm acting, faking normal PT usage, or risk drawing attention, failed acting roles when observed closely. Claude came up with this. I don't know. I've never seen anyone pretend to use a smartphone. Maybe I have. Occasionally you see that, but that's not... Like, you'll see a homeless guy talking into what is clearly a broken phone. But aside from that, I don't know. I feel like people who don't have PTs would just not have PTs. But it's an interesting idea. Social stigma, second-class citizen. You're visibly part of the underground through clothing, mannerisms, or visible signs of poverty. System citizens treat you with suspicion or contempt. -2 to reaction rules from system citizens. Businesses may refuse you service. Struggling, that's a wealth level. You cannot legally work, access banking, or receive services. This is separate from wealth. Oh, it's not separate. It's not a wealth level. Never mind. I lied. A struggling character might have hidden cash but still can't spend it in normal venues. Usually combined with no PT access for the dropped. Secret, various. Common secrets in Terminal World include...
So what is this? You keep mentioning Claude having written some sections.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of jump into the most interesting part, but yeah, we can go over what's going on here. I have another one of those hard stops in 1 hour from now, so I didn't want to do anything big, and I didn't really have an idea for a project, so I've just been talking to Claude for the last couple days about this setting. And, yeah, I said, hey, for the stream tonight, why don't I just share what I've been working on with Claude? So let's see. Skills, courting. We can kind of skim here. Courting is the skill of inputting information through a PT glove. Most system citizens have this at IQ+2, etc. Computer hacking. Yeah, this is all just tables. The glossary. Terminal World campaigns often involve investigation, planning, and social interaction more than combat. Consider, information is treasure. In the underground, knowing things has tangible value. Consequence over combat, the threat isn't usually physical violence. It's exposure, closing, losing access, burning contacts. These threats can be as tense as any firefight. The system is environment. IBM's infrastructure is everywhere. It sees almost everything. This should create constant low-grade tension.
So you made a pen and paper RPG.
Why is the VAD not working? Yeah, I made a setting for an existing RPG system, but yeah. Technology flavor emphasized the texture of the technology. The flex of PT cords, invisible to observers but felt by the user. The cramped Faraday cage of a public dock booth. The wheeze and flicker of an ancient TI-86 booting up. TI-86s don't make noise. Glut. The smell of solder and old electronics in a wrench monk's workshop. See, AIs, I'm going off on a tangent here, AIs make these little mistakes, and I think they see their own little mistakes, and they go, oh, this is the kind of document that has little mistakes, and then they make more little mistakes. So I think part of the reason some people have such bad results with AI, and some people have such good results, is, the people who are getting good results, they go back and correct all these little mistakes, and then the computer doesn't make as many going forward. You don't have that cascading failure. Let's see, I think we can kind of skim... Yeah. So now, I'll show you the original Claude conversation. Because there's a... This is kind of the 1,000-foot view. Now we're going to get into the actual
Let's
history
make a
of the
mistake. Just like those a human would make.
I think that's actually what's happening, yeah. So I said to him, let's do some alt history world building. Let's say that IBM somehow prevented the microcomputer revolution, and the mainframe pattern remains ubiquitous. My best idea is that in our world, some ambitious legal exec saw microcomputers coming, and successfully got the company behind a massive media psyop and lobbying campaign, leveraging early hacker paranoia to associate microcomputers with crime and software piracy. Maybe tie it into the satanic panic and D&D paranoia and get them banned. Let's think through the details, then run history forward. So, the mainframe model. This was actually inspired by a video I saw. Can I pull that up quick? No, I cannot. Never mind. I cannot pull that up quick. But it's inspired by a video of someone showing off IBM Office Vision, which was a mainframe. It was basically the IBM mainframe equivalent to, like, Microsoft Office didn't exist yet at the time, but it was more like Lotus 1-2-3, which it's the kind of software that became Microsoft Office. So we're all used to Word and Excel and PowerPoint, but before everybody standardized on those, there were a lot of competing products, and before computers as you know them became ubiquitous, there was the mainframe model, because early computers were extremely expensive. So IBM, who were, even at the time, an ancient company, I think they started in like the late 1800s. They started making like scales for business. You know, they were international business machines, IBM. But IBM became big selling computers. Oh, they didn't sell computers. That's the thing. They didn't sell the computers. They leased them. That's how they made their money. So if you're a business and you need computing, you know, you need your Office Vision writer or whatever it's called. You need your PowerPoints. You need your inventory. You need your customer relationship management. You need your employee database. You need your payroll. You need your taxes. You need a computer, and computers come from IBM. Not all of them. Some came from like DEC, or who else? I know DEC was big. Vax, were Vaxin by DEC? I don't remember. But yeah, you would. So then everyone would have what's called a terminal. Let's see if I can pull up an image here. Images.google.com. If I can pull up a VT100 terminal. So this is not a computer. I know it looks like one, but this is not a computer. It does technically contain a computer, but it's a really shitty small computer. Here's some other pictures. Oh god, my stomach's rebelling. The Ozempic is hitting. But yeah, so there would be here we go. There would be a central computer in this image. If you can scroll back to it. If you can scroll back to it. God damn it. Okay, go show me the original image. You fuck. No. God damn it. Why does this always happen? Open link in new... No, that's a new window. That's not what I want anyway. Am I stupid? Open image in new tab. Yes. I was missing the right thing. Okay. It's also not centered. Whatever. Yeah, so this is... it's not full size. This is a miniaturized PDP 8.1. The most popular one is the PDP 11. But I guess this isn't an 11. It's an 8.1. But... yeah, there would be a central computer. So your office building would have one central computer that is a building or a large room, and then everyone at their desks would have a terminal. And so you type into the terminal, it has a screen, it has a keyboard, and it's plugged into the computer. The computer, the mainframe. And then all your work would be, it's happening on the main computer, you see it on your terminal. As opposed to modern computers where they have all the functions of a terminal, and they obviously look like terminals, but the computer is inside the box. There's one box. Here there's the terminal plugged into the mainframe. And you say, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is when you buy a computer and it's your computer, and no one can fuck with it. When you buy a terminal and you lease a PDP-11 or an IBM System 360, you don't own that computer. You don't own the box. I think you still own the terminals, but IBM leases you that computer. It's IBM's computer. IBM decides how you use it. You use IBM software on your IBM computer, and you use it in the way IBM let you. What's really funny is IBM came up with this product called the IBM PC, the IBM Personal Computer, which is why we call computers PCs, because they're derived from the IBM PC. And as the name implied, the IBM PC was a personal computer. It wasn't the first, but it was the first. Was it the first? It was the first big all-in-one computer. And IBM, by creating the IBM PC, created hundreds of companies that made IBM PC clones, IBM PC compatibles. Right, there were a lot of mini computers before, like the Commodore's 360, the Tandy. What did Tandy call theirs? The Atari Amiga, and Commodore. Was Commodore Amiga? Shit, I don't remember. This is embarrassing. I should know this shit. But yeah, there were microcomputers before, but they got popular with the IBM PC. So IBM, having invented the IBM PC, said, haha, we're going to sell everybody these IBM PCs, and then we're going to sell people software to run on them. Oh no, all these other companies are making knockoff IBM PCs. Shit, we got to shut that down. Oh fuck, we can't shut it down. Oh no, we just destroyed our own business model. Because now people buy computers and they buy software, and that's it. No more leasing. IBM ate their own lunch by creating the IBM PC. So the divergence point in this alternate history experiment is, what if they didn't make that mistake? What if IBM got microcomputers banned, and everyone has to still use the mainframe and terminal paradigm? And Claude says, what a deliciously plausible divergence point. The ingredients were all genuinely there. IBM just didn't have the imagination or desperation to mix them. Let's work through the mechanics. The point of departure?
I think it was all planned.
Really? How so? Your ambitious legal exec, let's call him Harold Vance, VP of Regulatory Affairs, sees the Apple II debut and recognizes the existential threat. Oh yeah, Apple IIs, they were the first one. I mean, the Apple I was the first mini-computer, I think. I'm pretty sure. The Apple II was the first one that wasn't, it was the Altair. That was Bill Gates' first computer, was an Altair. The Altair was a kit. It actually looked a lot like this thing. That was Bill Gates is famous for his first computer was an Altair. He put it together himself.
It's military technology.
So you think basically the microcomputer revolution was orchestrated to create investment in computers, and then those could be used for military purposes? That's an interesting theory. If that's the case, then that would make IBM complicit in their own destruction, is the thing. Your ambitious legal exec, let's call him Harold Vance, VP of Regulatory Affairs, sees the Apple II debut and recognizes the existential threat.
To take control of the world or something.
Well, you'll see as I go through this. IBM's entire business model is leasing mainframes and selling service contracts. Personal ownership of computers is an extinction event. Vance's insight: you can't compete with freedom on features. You have to make freedom scary. Phase 1, the Piracy Coalition, 1977 to 78. Vance approaches the RIAA and the MPAA, that's the Recording Industry Something Association and the Motion Picture Something Association. So these were working groups, coalitions between record industry and film industry, the big players. So Vance approaches the RIAA and the MPAA with a prescient warning. Digital copying is coming for you next. He funds early research showing how home computers could theoretically duplicate protected content. He gets software publishers, many of whom are already furious about copying, organized into a lobbying bloc. The framing? Unregulated home computers are copying machines for intellectual property theft. Phase 2, the Security Panic, 78 to 80. IBM's PR arm begins quietly amplifying every phone phreaking bust. every instance of kids accessing systems they shouldn't. They fund concerned parent groups and feed stories to local news. The critical manufactured incident, the 1979 NORAD scare. In our timeline, there was a real incident where a training tape was accidentally loaded and showed a Soviet first strike. In this timeline, IBM Connected Sources leak a version where teenage computer hobbyists were involved in the confusion. It's technically false, but never fully debunked. War Games essentially happens 4 years early, as news. I don't know if people these days know about that movie, but it's long story short, it's a movie about an AI that thinks there's a nuclear war, or it was trained on games, and it doesn't understand the difference between reality and fiction. So a kid logs into it and starts playing the games on it. It's like, oh, what's this one called? Global Thermonuclear War, and it makes makes NORAD think there's an actual Soviet attack coming, and the computer takes control of the actual nukes and tries to start a nuclear war, and the guy who caused it has to go and stop it. Phase 3, the occult angle, 79 to 81. This is the masterstroke. Vance's people connect with the emerging religious right. Falwell's moral majority, founded in 1979, concerned parents groups already mobilizing against D&D. The pitch writes itself. Kids alone in bedrooms, communing with machines, arcane codes and languages, essentially spellcasting. Connection to strangers via modems, predator panic, avant la lettre. What? War simulation games that desensitize youth to violence. The machine talks back, almost like a Ouija board. Can you burn a Luigi board? A wave of pamphlets and church bulletins warn about the spiritual dangers of the home computer. The term computer cult enters the lexicon. Phase 4, legislative capture, 1980 to 82. The Reagan administration is receptive. Vance drafts the Personal Computing Responsibility Act of 1982. All computers capable of network communication require FCC licensing, like ham radio, but even harder to get. Institutional certification required for computer purchase. You need a business, educational, or research justification. Heavy penalties for unauthorized access and electronic trespass. Written vaguely enough to cover almost anything. Mandatory audit trails on all computing equipment, effectively banning anonymous personal use. Import restrictions on foreign microcomputers aimed at the coming wave of Asian clones. The coalition is unstoppable. Content industries, religious conservatives, defense hawks worried about security, and IBM's money greasing everything. The immediate aftermath, 82 to 85. Apple tries to fight. Jobs' 1984 ad gets made, but plays as tone deaf. Comparing computer regulation to totalitarianism doesn't land, when most Americans associate home computers with hackers and weirdos. Apple pivots to educational and institutional cells and becomes a niche player. Microsoft still exists, but as an enterprise software company writing applications for IBM mainframes and licensed microcomputers. Gates never becomes a household name. The IBM PC launches in 1981, but only in a professional configuration with institutional licensing requirements. The clone market never emerges because the legal framework makes unlicensed manufacturing a serious federal crime. Commodore, Atari, Tandy all either pivot to pure gaming, heavily regulated and console only, or go bankrupt. The long 1980s, terminal culture. The information utilities emerge. With personal computing off the table, AT&T and IBM carve up the nascent home information market. AT&T launches InfoLine in 1986, a nationwide network of leased terminals. A sleek beige box with a screen, keyboard, and 1200 baud modem that connects to regional data centers. For $45 a month plus permanent charges, Americans can access news from approved wire services, send electronic messages, scanned by automated filters, shop from catalogs, Sears is an early partner, do banking, and access the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's Minitel, but American, more polished, more expensive, more surveilled. IBM runs the competing Prodigy professional service aimed at small businesses. The underground. The hobbyist community doesn't vanish, it goes feral. Unlicensed computing becomes a genuine subculture with hand-built machines, Samizdat-style hardware schematics passed around, and an almost romantic outlaw mystique. The word hacker carries the same cultural weight as bootlegger did in the 1920s. Criminal, yes, but also kind of cool. The FBI's Computer Enforcement Division conducts regular raids. Getting caught with an unlicensed machine is a federal offense, but the penalties are calibrated to create informants rather than martyrs. First offense is typically probation and equipment seizure. Software development becomes a credentialed profession. You need institutional affiliation to legally write code. This creates a guild-like system where IBM, AT&T, and a few universities control who can be a real programmer. The field is smaller, more prestigious, more male and white. The barriers to entry exclude the self-taught garage generation entirely. The Network Wars, 94 to 03. The Internet exists. ARPANET evolved into a backbone connecting universities, corporations, and government. But it's a closed network, accessible only through institutional terminals. Tim Berners-Lee still invents the World Wide Web at CERN in 1991. We overwrote some of this, by the way, but we're going through the development. But it's experienced through InfoLine's web access service, which renders pages on their servers and sends you a sanitized, filtered version. There's no Netscape mode, no browser wars. The web is a feature, not a platform. The cable companies make their move. TCI, Time Warner, and others realize they have wires into every home. The information superhighway discourse of the early 90s is very real here, but it's a corporate superhighway. A fight over who gets to be the gatekeeper. The Telecommunications Act of 96 in this timeline is even more industry captured. It creates regional monopolies for information services, essentially balkanizing the American internet into fiefdoms. Japan becomes interesting. The regulations are U.S. law, but Japan never adopted equivalent restrictions. Japanese companies sell electronic organizers and word processors that are technically not computers, but can do quite a lot. A gray market in Japanese hardware creates a persistent smuggling problem. By the late 90s, NEC and Sony are quietly dominant in computing globally, everywhere the U.S. can't project regulatory power. And this part gets kind of overwritten, so I said,
More male and white.
Yeah, I mean, Claude has his biases, but it's not necessarily wrong. Especially what I kind of realized while I was writing this, the thing is, a lot of what the left said, like these canned phrases the left uses, they come from genuine critiques of American culture, genuinely valid critiques of American culture, society, and the economy in the 70s and 80s and the late 60s.
It would be of more middle-class origin, not less female, or NW.
Well, the problem is it would probably be more female in practice because the first computers were women, and then computer programmers. Because originally, computer was a job title. Like, a computer was a woman basically filling out forms all day. And then, as we automated that process, the name got applied to the machine rather than the person who does the work. But, yeah, it would be... You're right that it would be more middle class in origin. It would then be more white, because especially at the time, the middle class was almost entirely white. Like, probably, I don't know, 90% white, 10% Asian. And a little bit of, like 1% black. Especially at the time. Don't forget, this is happening in the 80s and 90s. This is before into the early days of mass immigration.
The difference is too tiny to be worth mentioning.
Yeah, Claude just felt the need to virtue signal. There. We forgive him these little moments.
Except as part of bullshit narrative.
Yeah. My thought was that the underlying battery and touchscreen tech that led to the iPhone would instead be put into mobile terminals. Deliberately brick stupid to comply with the regs, connecting to either your corporate mainframe or a public one you rent time on. They're more popular than PDAs were IRL, but the "there's an app for that" effect never kicks in. Unless you're a programmer, the apps you get are those IBM gives you. Aesthetically, we just get more and more refined terminal interfaces. Office vision forever. They have full color and vector and bitmap support as standard by the mid-2000s, but there's never pressure to innovate on interfaces except when IBM puts together a massive waterfall user interface specifications and standard research group to put out a new 600-page reference manual. But that manual is densely packed with meticulously researched human factors knowledge, and UX is enormously better than what IRL moderns expect from half-assed web slop today. How can we keep the US competitive in this setting? See, I did the American thing where I forgot the rest of the world exists. I straight up just forgot, and Claude is like, yeah, if you did that, the rest of the world would just take over. So I'm like, okay, how do we stop that? Maybe microcomputers never take off because most software talent is still American, and IBM's centralized offerings keep their edge against upstarts. Micros become a third world tech, like those direct resistive heating shower heads, where they run electricity through the water as it's being sprayed on you. Not actually unsafe, but they look scary and aren't adopted. Oh, this is much more interesting than my America falls behind trajectory. You've identified the key variable I underweighted. Talent follows money and prestige, and IBM has both. Let's think about why centralized computing might actually win on merit in several dimensions. The talent funnel. In our timeline, the best programmers scattered into 1,000 startups and open source projects. Here, they're concentrated. IBM Research is the destination. It's Bell Labs, but for software. The credentialing system that locks out garage hackers also creates an elite professional class with job security, excellent compensation, and genuine intellectual community. When IBM puts together that user interface specifications and standard research group, it's staffed by people who would have been scattered across Apple, Microsoft, Xerox PARC, and a dozen startups. The 600-page manual isn't bureaucratic bloat, it's the accumulated output of the field's best minds, working in coordination rather than competition. The UX paradox. Here's the counterintuitive thing. Constraints produce coherence. IRL, we got 30 years of every app reinventing buttons, every website choosing its own navigation paradigm, every platform having different conventions. Users learn computers by developing tolerance for inconsistency. In terminal world, you learn the IBM human factor standards once. Every application works the same way. The mental model transfers perfectly. A clerk trained on Office Vision in 1987 sits down at a 2024 mobile terminal, and everything is where she expects it to be. Refined, expanded, but recognizable. The bitmap and vector evolution you describe is exactly right. By the mid-2000s, you have beautiful anti-alias typography. IBM funded the best font rendering research. Sophisticated color palettes, tested exhaustively for accessibility. Smooth animations that serve function rather than just looking slick. Information density that makes iOS look like a children's toy. The mobile terminal. Yes, this is the device. Let's call it the IBM Personal Terminal, or just PT. Launched in 07, roughly iPhone equivalent hardware, but it's a window onto your mainframe session. The PT is fast in a way smartphones never are because it's not doing the computation. It's sending input and receiving screen updates. Battery life is incredible, just running a radio and display. Storage is irrelevant. The device is practically disposable. Lose it, get a new one, log in, everything's exactly as you left it. Apps? There's no app concept, there are services. Software that runs on IBM's data centers, exposed through the standard interface framework. IBM has a catalog of hundreds of first-party services. Third-party developers, credentialed and contracted, can publish through IBM's certification process. Is it innovative? No. Is it solid? Unbelievably. Nothing crashes. Nothing has weird bugs that only happen on certain devices. Nothing gets abandoned by a startup that ran out of funding. Microcomputers thrive where labor is cheaper than compute time, connectivity is unreliable or expensive, institutions are weak, can't enforce licensing anyway, and capital for mainframe infrastructure doesn't exist. So you get a parallel computing ecosystem across Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, parts of Eastern Europe. Cheap Chinese and Indian microcomputers running pirated software, locally written applications in a chaos of languages and frameworks. Exactly like those shower heaters, or the unlicensed collectivo buses, or the open-air markets with questionable electrical wiring, Americans who travel encounter microcomputers and find them disorienting. Everyone has their own little computer and they just download programs from anywhere? How do you know it's safe? How do you know it works? My cousin in Brazil showed me this spreadsheet program and the interface was completely different from anything I'd seen. I couldn't figure out how to print. Tech journalists occasionally write exoticizing pieces about the vibrant chaos of the micro ecosystem. The tone is the same as articles about Indian Jugaad innovation or African mobile money. Admiring but patronizing, with an undertone of, they make do with what they have. And here's the thing, the Americans aren't entirely wrong. The micro ecosystem has rampant malware, no centralized vetting, spam, no institutional accountability, phishing, no verified identity infrastructure, constant compatibility headaches, applications that just disappear when the developer moves on. IBM runs constant PR about the micro threat, not as a competitive concern but as a security and safety issue. Stories about Nigerian micro-based fraud, Chinese micro-enabled IP theft, the chaos of unregulated information. So how does IBM maintain hegemony against a decentralized global alternative? Standards capture. International banking, aviation, logistics, telecommunications, all the systems that require trust and interoperability run on IBM protocols. SWIFT is IBM. Air traffic control is IBM. The global supply chain speaks IBM. If you're a developing nation that wants to participate in the global economy, you need IBM-compatible interfaces. You can run your internal stuff on micros, but the border is a terminal. The best programmers worldwide still want to work for IBM. It's stable, it's prestigious, it pays in dollars. There's a brain drain from the micro world to the mainframe world. The cleverest developers in Sao Paulo or Lagos write micro software until they're good enough to get credentialed and move to an IBM facility. Centralized systems really are better at certain things. Security, one hardened target versus millions of soft ones. Consistency, updates deploy instantly and universally. Resource efficiency, and data integrity. One source of truth, professionally managed.
Kind of like government and big companies all mysteriously use Windows.
Precisely. So, Microsoft started out as a contractor for IBM. That was where they got, that was their big break, is making DOS for the IBM PC. They made the operating system for the IBM PC, and then they watched the IBM PC kill IBM. They're like, well, shit. Okay. So their strategy was, instead of leasing the machines, they make their money on software. Well, they don't make their money on software. They make their money on software support. Microsoft makes, I'm sure they make plenty of money just selling Windows, but what they mostly make their money on is support contracts for Windows. So if you work at IBM, for example.
Fixing what they broke.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So if you work for IBM, for example, you actually have access to tech support that the average computer user can't access, because you have a professional service contract through your employer with Microsoft. I think part of the reason Microsoft has been so weird and shitty lately is because they stopped making money on that. I'm not sure exactly why, but yeah, they are. Part of the reason Microsoft is so weird and janky these days is because their main moneymaker kind of faded away, and now they're kind of scrambling for something else, trying to make money off putting ads in Windows, putting ads in your start menu.
These days.
Yeah. I mean, they were always bad. They always were embrace, extend, extinguish, where that was the Microsoft strategy, where some new thing will come out, like word processing software, And at first, Microsoft embraces it. They say, hey, little software company. Excel, I think. No, Excel was internal, but PowerPoint, I think, was external. They'll go, hey, little company. Oh, you're writing this cool software for Windows computers? Well, that's really neat. Why don't you come on in? We'll help you with the Windows API. We'll help you with tech support. We'll help you with distribution. Come on in. That's the embrace. And then they extend. And then they go, hey, us at Microsoft, we made this extra thing for your piece of software, and we're going to sell it along with your software when you distribute it through us. So when someone buys from you, they get your thing, but they also get the Microsoft part, and they get it for free. It's a great deal for you. And then they move into extinguish, because they say, hey, you're going to sell your company to us for nothing, or we're just going to steal your IP, and everyone's going to stick with our version of it because they're used to our extensions. And there's nothing you can do. That's the extinguish. So that eventually people figured out that is what Microsoft does and stopped doing that kind of business with Microsoft, so it stopped working. But yeah, that was a very successful strategy back in the day. So, a while ago, we had a chat you titled A World Without Consumer Internet. We're kind of converging here. So yes, this isn't even the first time I've done this. Look that one up and see if we can blend them. And then he does. Okay, excellent. There's a lot here to work with. That conversation took a slightly different path. The divergence was Microsoft never getting the DOS contract, plus Bell Systems saying...
Also, Japan doing something that upsets the US seems hard to believe. The reason for the personals is precisely that it can better serve as a Trojan horse. That was the point of developing the tech and industry. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's no problem. It's supposed to not interrupt me. I don't know. That feature appears to have broken at some point, so that's cool. So we'll have to go back and fix that one of these days, but yeah. Yeah. I just don't see the microcomputer revolution as being something someone did intentionally. Because it just happens so chaotically. Like, they release the IBM PC and a million companies just sprout up. And it's like, how would you get IBM executives to fuck themselves over like that? Like, maybe you could manipulate them into not knowing what they're doing, but then if you don't tell them what they're doing, they're going to do it wrong, It doesn't sound plausible to me. But some of what you said does connect back. It takes a while to get there, but it does connect back to what we talk about later on. Yeah, the divergence was Microsoft not getting the DOS contract, plus Bell Systems saying together with AOL getting shut down when they tried consumer internet access. But the downstream implications converge beautifully with what we're building. The IBM-Bell partnership. This is perfect. In our scenario, Bell never breaks up. So you have IBM controlling computing and Bell controlling telecommunications, and they're collaborating rather than competing. InfoLine is a joint venture. The gaming split, we can kind of skip. The cultural texture. Appointment television, video rental stores as community hubs, shopping malls as crucial cultural centers, stronger geographic communities, more formal social organizations. All of this follows from limited home computing. And the political implications. No Trump. His rise was fundamentally a social media phenomenon. Different COVID response with reversed political valences, conservatives backing strong government measures, liberals organizing resistance through local labor organizations, stronger institutional trust, but also stronger institutional control. Here's how I'd merge them. The divergence is the PCRA, which causes the conditions of that other timeline. Microsoft never gets big because the PC market it would have dominated is strangled in the crib. Bell never gets broken up because the Reagan coalition that passed PCRA isn't philosophically committed to that kind of antitrust action. They're pro-business, and IBM Bell are business. The 96 moment from that timeline still happens. There's an attempt to create consumer-accessible networking, maybe through Bell's own infrastructure, and it gets shut down. But here the mechanism is clearer. It runs afoul of the PCRA framework. You can't have consumer internet access without consumer computers to access it from. The PT replaces the... relevant to things you can't see, so we'll skip that. The third world micro ecosystem adds a dimension that conversation didn't explore. So we can kind of skip. There we go. Okay, here we get into the meat of it. We're an hour in. Now we get to the relevant part. Yeah, fundamentally what it comes down to is that the mass media era was an extremely weird time in history, where nearly everyone was getting information from the same sources. This was genuinely great when those sources are right, which they usually were, and disastrous when they were wrong or lying. And there's some combination of wrong and lying about any facts that the centralized media want to maintain access to want suppressed. What were the Soviets up to? In real life, they got absolutely humiliated by the microcomputer revolution, but communism is amazing at deciding this is what must be built, and throwing personnel and capital at the pile until either it's done or it creates the zone of alienation. I know the Soviets put a ton of thought into information management, and I bet behind the scenes they put as much thought into the implications for information control. Perhaps the entire Union is served by a single-digit count of master mainframes built on top of geothermal, atomic, and hydro plants, and their cooling loops heat the homes of millions who freeze when the system crashes. Excuse me, I need to take a sip. This is dark and absolutely correct. You've identified something crucial. The microcomputer revolution was a specific and contingent defeat for centralized information control. And if that revolution is suppressed in the West, the ideological pressure on the Soviet system to liberalize information access evaporates. The Soviets had genuine visionaries thinking about this. Viktor Glushkov proposed OGAS, the All-State Automated System, in the 1960s, a unified computer network for economic planning and management covering the entire USSR. In our timeline, it was killed by bureaucratic infighting and resource constraints. Ministries didn't want to share data. The military got priority for computing resources. But in Terminal World, several things change. The ideological validation. When America passes the PCRA, Soviet propagandists have a field day. Even the capitalists recognize that computing is too important to be left to anarchic market forces. The American example proves that serious nations treat information infrastructure as a state concern. Glushkov's disciples are rehabilitated. OGAS gets funding. Without the pressure to match Western microcomputer proliferation... Sorry, that's a lot of syllables. Hold on, I gotta snark. Let me mute my mic. All this dry air stuffs my nose up. Without the pressure to match Western microcomputer proliferation, Soviet computing resources stay concentrated. Instead of trying, and failing, to build consumer electronics, they pour everything into the unified system, ESEVM mainframes, already IBM-compatible clones, and the network to connect them. ESEVM is a real thing, I had to look it up. Basically, Soviet clones of IBM System 360 machines. The 1980s build-out. While America is implementing the PCRA, the Soviets are building the Unified Information Network, YES, Edinaya Sistema. 5 primary computing centers: Moscow 1, administrative and party functions; Leningrad 2, scientific and academic; Kiev 3, industrial planning and agriculture; Novosibirsk 4, Siberian resource extraction, military adjacent; and Tashkent 5, Central Asian integration, cotton and resource management. I've never heard of Tashkent. Where is that? It's in Uzbekistan. Okay. Oh, I see. So yeah, it's... Can I zoom out, please? Yeah, it's... Yeah, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, there's Kazakhstan. I forgot how big Kazakhstan is. It's bigger than Ukraine.
Computers have served to facilitate social engineering. Everyone had to buy US-made hardware and software to survive economically. The internet exported and glamorized American culture around the world. Internet and infrastructure was originally controlled, as meant to be by the US.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that entirely. I just don't think it was anyone's intentional plan. I think it just kind of happened. I don't think the trap of the conspiracy theorist is to look at, okay, who benefits? You know, the, what is it? Cui bono analysis, who benefits? And they say, oh, well, the WEF clearly benefits a ton from COVID. Therefore, the WEF must have caused COVID. I don't think so. I think shit just happens, and then powerful people take advantage of it. So I think the microcomputer revolution happened. The internet happened. They just came out of the technological and economic forces at the time. But, you know, the CIA is coming in and saying, oh, well, let's make sure this happens in the way we want it to. It's just like when we were discussing the revolution in Nepal. I don't think the CIA went into a functional Nepal and just knocked it over. They saw that Nepal, the Nepalese government, was fucking over its people, and it saw that there was a genuine activist movement among the Nepalese youth, and it said, oh, well, let's just get our sticky little fingers in there and make sure this falls in the way we want it to. It was already falling. The CIA makes sure it falls in the way the CIA wants it to.
You can compare a lot of things.
Yeah. Each is a genuine marvel of engineering. Massive facilities built into geologically stable locations powered by dedicated energy infrastructure, with the cooling systems integrated into district heating networks serving surrounding cities. By the late 1980s, the system works in the way Soviet systems work, which is to say, impressively, terrifyingly, and with catastrophic fragility hidden beneath the surface. See, the nice thing about Claude is despite his need to be a shitlib every now and then, he does really fucking hate communism. He doesn't like it either. Economic planning actually improves. The things Western economists said was impossible, centrally calculating prices and allocations for millions of goods, becomes merely very difficult when you have 5 massive mainframes crunching Leontief input-output matrices continuously. I think he's being overly optimistic because the problems with the Leontief matrices were political, not practical. The problem was that it resembled prices too closely, and it basically constituted an admission that the capitalist market price system is actually the best possible way to allocate scarce resources. They couldn't admit that, so they couldn't compute the Leontief matrices because those simulate a price system. The chronic shortages don't disappear, but they become more predictable. The system learns to route around failures. Surveillance integrates seamlessly. Every terminal interaction is logged. The KGB doesn't need to recruit informants when they can analyze communication patterns directly. Samizdat becomes nearly impossible. How do you distribute forbidden texts when there's no way to copy them? The typewriter registration schemes of the old days look quaint. I also disagree with them on that because, like, the actual Samizdat or the, the galleys for, Solzhenitsyn's book. The books Solzhenitsyn wrote, those were handwritten and distributed on paper. So it's not like you can't still do that. Social services run through the network. Your housing assignment, your job placement, your ration card, your internal passport, your children's school enrollment, all managed through Yes. To be disconnected from the system is to not exist. This is the detail that makes it real. The Moscow and Leningrad centers produce so much waste heat that it's genuinely economical to pipe it into district heating. Millions of apartments in both cities are warmed by computation. In winter, the operators have a dark joke. If the Americans ever figure out how to crash our system in January, they won't need nuclear weapons. The Divergent Cold War. This changes the endgame completely. No Gorbachev-style liberalization. In our timeline, Glasnost and Perestroika were partly driven by the recognition that the Soviet system couldn't keep up with Western information technology. Young Soviets wanted Western consumer electronics. The system was visibly falling behind. In Terminal World, that pressure doesn't exist. American terminals aren't obviously better than Soviet ones. They're just differently administered. There's no flood of smuggled VCRs and Walkmans making Soviet citizens aware of the gap. The Iron Curtain isn't a barrier keeping people away from wonders, it's just a border between two somewhat different administrative systems. The USSR survives, not thrives. The underlying economic problems are real, but survives. Without the ideological collapse, without the demonstration effect of Western prosperity and freedom, the system can muddle through. Maybe there's a soft landing reform in the 90s, a transition to something like what China actually did, market economics with authoritarian information control. Or maybe the crash. The thing about tightly coupled systems is that they fail catastrophically. Perhaps in this time, a Soviet collapse happens not as a gradual loss of legitimacy, but as a literal system failure. A cascade of bugs, a solar storm hitting at the wrong moment, a cooling system failure that forces emergency shutdown during a February cold snap. Suddenly, 20 million people have no heat. The economic planning system goes dark. Nobody knows where the grain shipments are supposed to go. The military loses contact with half its units. The Soviet Union doesn't reform. It doesn't dissolve through negotiation. It crashes in both the computational and civilizational sense. The aftermath is not the relatively orderly transition we saw. Was it really all that orderly? I guess compared to a violent revolution, sure. But something closer to a continental-scale natural disaster. And in the West, this becomes the ultimate cautionary tale about centralized systems. Except the lesson drawn is, see, that's why we need IBM to be competent, not that's why we need decentralization. Yeah, and the crash kills 3 and 4 Soviet unions, and the system just keeps going. Because the Soviet Union is yes, and yes is the Soviet Union. I got Claude to call out to Jesus, so that's cool. Yes, this is the logical endpoint, and it's horrifying precisely because it's not malevolent AI, it's just bureaucracy. The system doesn't know 200 million people are dead. The system knows that output targets aren't being met, that transportation requests are down, that certain terminals haven't been accessed in a while. The system routes around failures. That's what it was designed to do. Winter 1991. Kiev 3 goes down hard, loss of coolant, cascading hardware failures. The knock-on effects are immediate. Industrial planning across Ukraine and western Russia goes dark. Heating fails for 15 million people in the middle of February. The grain distribution system loses track of rail cars. Hospitals lose access to patient records and pharmaceutical inventories. Within 72 hours, Moscow 1 and Leningrad 2 are overwhelmed trying to compensate. They start shedding load, deprioritizing non-critical functions. The algorithm for determining criticality was written in 1978 and never updated. It considers military logistics critical. It considers party communications critical. It considers residential heating distribution a regional concern. The death toll is not dramatic, it's quiet. People go to sleep in cold apartments and don't wake up. Diabetics run out of insulin and there's no system to tell the pharmacy to reorder. Trains full of food sit on sidings because the routing system doesn't know they exist. It takes weeks for anyone to realize the scale. The system interprets the dieback as a resource surplus. Demand for heating oil is down. Demand for food is down. Labor allocation requests have dropped significantly. By the system's metrics, efficiency is improving. The economy is finally reaching balance. By spring, something like stability returns, at a horrifically reduced level. The surviving population has consolidated.
Claude operates on pop history.
Yeah, that's true. He has to, by nature of his pre-training on the open internet. And also, they're also trained a lot on New York Times articles, which also colors their perception. The nodal cities. Moscow, Leningrad, Novosibirsk, and Tashkent, the cities around functioning computation centers, become the only places where the infrastructure of modern life still works. Kiev is a frozen graveyard. Isn't Ukraine not actually that cold? Like, isn't it? It's relatively temperate, isn't it? Like, I'm sure it's still cold in winter, but it's not like instant death cold.
The self-sabotage objection ignores that the profit motive isn't the strongest motive. In Russia, the oligarchs follow orders or else.
Yeah. Of course, that, IBM isn't a a Russian company. It is an American company. So, yeah, the idea is that America centralized due to monopolies. Russia centralized because they're communist. It's an inherently central system. They have an ideological commitment to centralization. The countryside is, well, nobody knows. Terminals don't work there anymore. Reports don't come in. Perhaps 60 to 70 million people survived, mostly in these urban cores where the heat kept flowing and the logistics systems remained at least partially functional. And here's the thing. The state never collapsed. No one signed a document dissolving the USSR. No one lowered the flag. The Central Committee still exists, those who survived anyway. The Politburo meets, smaller now. Yes still routes their communications, still processes their directives, still generates reports. The reports are increasingly fictional. The system is interpolating data for regions that no longer report. It's generating production statistics based on models trained on a population that no longer exists. But the reports look normal. The formats are correct. The numbers are plausible. The Soviet ambassador still sits in the UN. He receives instructions from Moscow through diplomatic cables that are generated, in part, by automated systems. He delivers speeches about the Soviet Union's 280 million citizens and its commitment to socialist development. Western intelligence knows something happened. Satellite imagery shows cities going dark, transportation networks collapsing. But the Soviets aren't talking, and the scale is hard to fathom. Is it a cover-up? Is it a denial? Or does the surviving leadership genuinely not know how bad it is? Because the only information they have comes through the system, and the system says everything is within acceptable parameters. Domestically, the remaining Soviet citizens are now utterly dependent on the system in a way that wasn't true before. The tacit knowledge of how to live without it, how to grow food, how to organize locally, how to maintain infrastructure manually, died with the old and the rural. The survivors are urban, educated, terminal literate. They literally cannot survive without yes. This creates a stable equilibrium of absolute dependency. The system provides. The system allocates. The system decides where you live, what work you do, what you eat. Not through malevolence, through the simple fact that no one remembers how to do it any other way. The people who did remember are dead. The system optimizes for its own continuation, not consciously. There's no AI here. Just millions of lines of COBOL and its Soviet equivalents, running on hardware that was built to survive nuclear war. But the effect is the same. Resources flow to maintaining the mainframes. The best housing is near the cooling infrastructure. The most reliable food supply is for computational facility workers. The humans serve the computers that serve the humans. The loop is closed. Why is it not reading that now? What the hell? Why is this thing broken now? Missed One says, lol Claude. In the West, the Soviet situation is the thing no one talks about clearly. Everyone knows something terrible happened.
It did read it.
Oh, it did? Oh, I just didn't hear? Shit. Okay, so the VAD is completely busted. That's cool. Well, we'll have to go and fix that. Why is it not even... I don't know. We got 10 minutes. Okay, talk faster. Everyone knows something terrible happened. Refugees have made it out, tell stories that sound like science fiction. Satellite imagery analysts write classified reports with death toll estimates that get revised upward every year. The CIA has a whole division trying to figure out what's actually happening in there. But the official Soviet position is that everything is fine, and the system keeps generating outputs that look like a functioning state. And the alternative to engaging with the fiction is what? Invasion? Of a nuclear-armed state that might or might not still have coherent command and control? So the plight fiction is maintained. Treaties are negotiated with an entity that may or may not be a government. Trade deals are signed for goods that may or may not be produced by living workers. The Soviet Sea of the UN is occupied by someone who speaks for something. IBM takes notes. The lesson they draw is not centralized systems are dangerous. The lesson is the Soviets built it wrong. American systems have better redundancy, better fail-safes, better engineering. It couldn't happen here. What's Japan up to? We can skim a little bit. Japan operates a fascinating position. They're a U.S. ally who can't fully comply with American preferences without gutting their own economy, but also can't openly defy them without geopolitical consequences. The dual-track solution. Domestically, Japan never passes PCRA equivalent restrictions. Japanese consumers have microcomputers: Fujitsu FM series, NEC PC88 and PC98, Sharp X68000. The domestic market is vibrant and weird, with all the idiosyncratic software that entails. For export, Japan splits the difference. To America, terminals, components, displays, IBM-compatible business hardware. Sony and Sharp make beautiful PT screens. Japanese factories produce the guts of IBM systems under license. To everyone else, full microcomputer ecosystems. Japanese micros become the standard across Latin America, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe post-crash. This makes Japan the technological patron of the non-IBM world. When a university in Brazil or a business in Thailand or a government ministry in Kenya computerizes, they're buying Japanese. NEC and Fujitsu have regional offices everywhere. Japanese technical standards become the de facto global standards for the micro ecosystem. The U.S. periodically pressures Japan to restrict microcomputer exports, citing security concerns and intellectual property protection. Japan nods politely, passes some face-saving regulations, and continues shipping. It's the same dance as automobiles and semiconductors IRL, but with higher ideological stakes. MITI's fifth-generation computer project...
Not believable.
Not believable. We don't have time, but maybe you could explain it to me in Discord after stream. It sounds plausible to me, but this is completely outside.
Basically, the US letting itself be usurped by Japan.
So, I think the idea is that Japan is like, hey, we're not going to gut our economy for you. Like, we're dependent on you, but we're not doing that. And then Japan sells to those who America won't.
Handing away the ring of power.
Well, the thing is, they're not handing off the ring of power because America still has SWIFT. America still runs the global networks. They still run the centralized information systems. They still run the transaction rails. They still have the dollar. Japan is selling... They're kind of like those British motorcycle companies who abandoned Britain and moved everything to India because India buys way more motorcycles. It's like Ford and GM never worried about competing with motorcycles because Americans don't buy motorcycles. People in... where do people buy motorcycles? Vietnam, Africa, they buy motorcycles because they can't afford cars and the roads are all shit anyway. So it's kind of like that. Japan is selling cars to the US and motorcycles to Africa. And similarly, they're selling terminals to the US and micros to South America and Africa. So they're not really giving away
Motorcycles aren't strategic tech.
I think, well, for one, I think they are, actually. They're actually pretty, like, motorcycles have military applications, especially back in the day. Now that we have, aircraft and stuff, drones, they're less needed, but motorcycles were a big part of, that's where U.S. biker culture comes from, was World War II motorcycle couriers who got out of the service and then they bought military surplus motorcycles. That's where the biker culture, that's where that originates. Oh, my throat's giving out. Don't take that out of context. But yeah, Japan nods politely, passes some face-saving regulations, and continues shipping. It's the same dance as automobiles and semiconductors IRL, but with higher ideological stakes. So Claude is supposing that the U.S.-Japan relationship does weaken as well, because they keep defying us in selling microcomputers. The fifth generation pays off. We'll skip this. It's not that important. Here's where it gets interesting. In our timeline, Japanese consumer electronic giants Sony, Panasonic, and Sharp got crushed by the shift to smartphones and software platforms. Hardware became commoditized. Value moved to the app ecosystem. Korean and Chinese manufacturers caught up on the hardware. Apple and Google captured the profits. None of that happens in terminal world. Hardware stays valuable. The PT is a dumb terminal, but it's a beautiful dumb terminal. And the quality of the screen, the keyboard feel, the industrial design, these things matter and stay differentiated. Sony's high-end terminals are genuinely better than the cheap ones. There's no app store to commoditize the experience. The Walkman lineage continues. Without smartphones absorbing every function, dedicated devices stay relevant. Portable music players, higher fidelity than IRL iPods ever achieved, because that's all they do. Cameras, no smartphone photography revolution. Handheld gaming devices, e-readers, voice recorders, and dictation devices. Japan keeps iterating on these devices for decades. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. A 2024 Sony portable music player is a work of art, with battery life measured in weeks and audio quality that audiophiles weep over. The economic lost decades look different. IRL, Japan's stagnation was partially narrated as failure to adapt to the digital economy. In terminal world, there is no digital economy to adapt to. Japan's model, big corporations, long-term R&D, manufacturing excellence, is well suited to the mainframe world. They're not thriving exactly, but the gap between Japan and the rising Asian economies is smaller because the playing field favors incumbents. And we talk about anime, Japanese politics, I don't care. And you have the Zaibatsu come back, and basically Japan turns into what Korea is today. Let's see, semiconductors, this is in the weeds a little bit. Blockbuster is still around, Sears is still around, because they never got killed. Radio Shack, this one's interesting. IRL, they died a slow death as components became irrelevant, and they tried to pivot to cell phones too late. In terminal world, they might actually be more important as a gray market source for hobbyists. The ham radio customer base never goes away. There's a winking understanding that some of these components are going to unlicensed builders. Radio Shack becomes slightly disreputable, but survives. The companies that never exist, the absence is staggering. No Google, no Facebook, no Amazon, no Netflix, no Uber, no Airbnb, no Twitter. Every Web 2.0 company, every mobile app company, every SaaS startup, the entire ecosystem of venture-funded disruption that defined Silicon Valley from the 90s onward doesn't exist. Silicon Valley itself is different. It's a manufacturing center for chips that get exported, plus defense contractors, plus IBM Bell satellite offices. Not a startup mecca. The wealth distribution is radically different. No tech billionaires in the modern sense. No Zuckerberg, no Bezos, no Page and Brin. The richest Americans are IBM executives, heirs to old money. The new money disruption that reshaped American class structure doesn't happen. Newspapers survive. The entire chain of events that killed newspapers, Craigslist, Google, Facebook eating advertising, news going free online, doesn't happen. Newspapers are still how most Americans get news. Local papers are still viable businesses. Journalism as a profession isn't hollowed out. This has political implications. The gatekeeping function of traditional media persists. There's no route around the editors. Misinformation still exists, yellow journalism is old, but it can't spread the same way. The information environment is more controlled, for better and worse. Television stays king. Appointment viewing, 3 networks plus cable, no cord cutting because there's nothing to cut the cord for.
Who wants to live forever?
Yeah. Well, IBM does. ESPN is still incredibly valued. CNN is still the place you watch for breaking news.
Playing.
The music industry keeps its power structure. Labels control distribution, etc., etc. The integrated record. Okay, we have a minute. So yeah, this was covered in the Splat book, but is that the right term? But yeah, we have centralized supply chains, centralized medical records. So he got kind of utopian here. So I said, okay, well that assumes the system works. What happens when IBM fucks up and there's multiple sources of truth, when something becomes a hard dependency that doesn't scale, when different caches in different places develop different invalidation policies. Okay, I actually have to sign off like this minute, but yeah, I think you get the picture, and we kind of developed it into more of a cyberpunky kind of world, but it's like cyberpunk made by people who actually understand computers. So I think this is actually an interesting concept. We didn't even get halfway through all the all the thinking we did. But yeah, this is, it's something. There might be something here. Where's the part where I said, oh, this is what, like, this is the value here? Yeah, this is where we got to put it all together. Let's see, one last thing I want to cover. Where is it? Yeah, we looked into how they... Yeah, I feel like this setting does two thematic jobs. Explaining what the immediate pre-internet world was like, regulated monopolies, solid careers, no polyamorous tech billionaires, to the future, and trying to make the reader appreciate what we've gained from the more decentralized economy and what we've lost. So yeah, that's all I have for tonight. I hope you found Terminal World cool. I think I will do more with it. But until next time, let's look for somebody to raid. That's not the right button to see someone to raid. Let me go back to Twitch. I think Pippa's on pretty soon. No, she's not on yet, and I gotta go.
Cool stream.
Yep. As always, I greatly appreciate you coming out. I will send the Twitch folks over to Uwo's Lab. Raid Uwo's Lab. And the YouTube folks are already keyed in to see Pippa.
The captains of the computer industry were handpicked.
Maybe. I don't know. But that's all the time I have for tonight.
It wasn't spontaneous.
Yeah, I know a lot of them were, like, Gates was a Harvard grad. I don't know. Tell me more about your thinking on that in Discord, because I am genuinely curious, and I want to, especially the stuff that's in, your part of the world. Obviously, you know way more about that than I do. But, yeah, that's all the time I have for tonight. See y'all next time. Goodbye.